Right. I'll be very surprised after all that if any of this is actually working. But anyway, I'm filled with rage right now after these headphones.
I mean, first of all, how is
Don't
that?
start all this. Don't start
How
this
is
crap
that?
about wireless
How is
being
that ever?
rubbish.
How is that ever different from your normal state of mind? And secondly, this is what I'm. You see, I'm sitting here, nice, cool, comfortable, with a cold Orion, enjoying my wire full headphones that never fail and never cause any issues and have amazing sound quality, and they cost 1/10 the price, so 1/20 the price actually if you really go for it. So yeah.
I mean, you bought a pair of headphones one time in a convenience store and called me, and like, you might as well have been. You'd have been better just shouting loudly from Japan. It was the sound quality was so
Yeah,
bad.
that was an emergency.
So
that was an emergency.
I think you're
purchase.
really on thin ice.
No, that was an emergency purchase. This is not the. I remember that actually. That was not the usual sound quality. That was just the good ones broke. But yeah.
Yes. Anyway.
So can I pour my beer now? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. It's quite sweaty in this loft.
Oh, lovely.
I don't have an air conditioner either, so I'm not cool.
Oh,
calm and collected like you.
I mean, you wouldn't want to be in the third floor of my house without it on. Not in this weather. So yeah.
Well, I've never been invited, so still waiting for the invite. Anyway, right, let's get started. So.
Okay, so it's day 5. Feels like day 55. My voice is finally gone, so it now sounds like last time. Dry air, jet lag, smoke, everything's caught up with me, but pushing on, right, for the cause.
Got a beautiful morning here, Monday morning.
Yeah.
Still a holiday. It's strange. It feels like it's a work day, but it's still a holiday.
Yeah. It's a national holiday in Japan, so despite the background noise of traffic, it's actually quite quiet in Nagasaki. We're headed up the coast, back towards Sasebo eventually, but we're not going that far.
Waiting for the very, very cute Nagasaki streetcar or tram or trolley or whatever country you're in.
Yeah,
call it. Yeah.
We're going to a place called Mellow, which we were sort of hip to by the brownie owner who said it's quite new, we think, but sometimes it all blurs into one, right? Who said what about what?
But it's not listed in our handy Kyushu Jazz Road book, so I think, which was published in the early 23, so I think it is new.
Yeah, so it must be new. And then back to Nagasaki for a sort of slightly end of camp feeling day where, you know, like just kind of cleaning up things, getting the rooms tidy, saying goodbye to friends. It's that sort of day, but hopefully we've got 3 places tonight, right?
We've got
certainly 2 at least. Right?
Yeah, we've got Saramanian and the mystery of the shutter.
Mystery of the Django shutter. So we went to Django about 4 times last night, and each time I convinced somebody was pranking us because each time the shutter was in a slightly different height. But there was, and I actually earlier in the day
with no lights and no sound, coming from upstairs.
And the reason we kept going back was not, although I know it's the definition of madness, just keep doing something that's not working, but I saw someone going in. Now I'm starting to wonder that I hallucinated. I saw a woman going in with a suitcase, so I assumed that she had come back from holiday. She was getting stuff ready to open at 7. There was also a sign that said it was open at 7:30, but it never ever opened. So anyway, let's see how the day pans out.
Here comes our cute little trolley. Perfect
right on time.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, to episode 71. I thought this was actually episode 70, but it's 71. That's one of the worst stories I've ever told. James, how really bodes well for the episode. How are you?
Well, I thought it would be me with Little Dopey here because of the how should I put it? rough and gritty streets of North Yokohama in eastern Japan are hot, and very sweaty. I mean, we are in the midst of a crazy heat wave here. So feeling a little bit tired out after a day out, but ready to talk some jazz joints, man. And the good news is after after a rather lengthy ramp up to this episode, I finally was able to pour my cold beer and ready to talk some jazz over the fine sound quality of my Apple earphones. So let's do it.
All right. Well, bittersweet this episode because obviously we have been in Kyushu now for a few days, and I think we left off at Milestone. No, just kidding. Where were we last time? Wait, have we done? Wait, we've been to Watabe, haven't we? We have, yeah.
I sense some editing coming on here.
Oh, it's a different episode. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we're in Nagasaki now. I thought we were still in Sasebo. So bittersweet because actually this is the last day of the trip that you and I were together because you have a job. Well, I have a job too, but I was on holiday in some respect. And so obviously had a lot more flexibility than you. So I think we'd probably done the 5 days in the end, hadn't we? Including that first evening. And this was the last one of those. And we still had a couple of belters to visit because obviously we talked in the last episode about Saruman and in fact Django too, the mysterious rising and falling shutter on the Shotengai. So we didn't get into either of those. So we sort of stored those up for the last evening. But before that, I can't even remember how we came across this place. It's a very new place called Mellow, and I think with this one, it was another kind of train out and a taxi. It was one of those walks that looks deceptively near on a map, but then when you realize it's 20 minutes in heat with very little tree cover or anything like that, it's probably just not worth it. And obviously you had not only a hat, but a long trench coat on as well. So that might have been a factor in the decision. But what can we say about Mellow? I mean, I've actually just got wow. There's the first note I've got about Mellow is just wow! Exclamation mark.
Oh, okay. That's very succinct. Well, let's set the setting. I mean, yeah, you mentioned it's a bit outside of Nagasaki. We talked in the last episode about the geography of that part of Japan, that part of Kyushu, with the gigantic bay and all the hills that surround it, and you've got all the history of the Catholic churches, and now the modern history of all the golf courses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Mellow, though, is in sort of the town that's in between Sasebo and Nagasaki called Omura, and it's very, very historic. It was a very historic, important town in that period when Japan was first opening up, when the Western countries were arriving in the 1600s. So we, of course, have, as you mentioned, we had to take a taxi from the station. We get there a bit early, and we see that the Mellow is actually, it's not the guy's house. I mean, we've talked at nauseum about people building jazz gisa in their house. He actually built a completely new separate structure right next to his house. And it was absolutely gorgeous. This just beautiful, beautiful wooden sort of cabin. But we were a little bit too early. So Philip, do you remember what we did? We walked just right next door to the master's house was this gigantic park that used to be the sort of hunting ground and playground of the local feudal lord 500 years ago. So that was like a real, wow, we are in Kyushu now, where you just everywhere you walk, there's a different historic site.
Yeah, I mean, to all intents and purposes, you were just sort of both of us, I suppose. Sometimes I feel like you're a biographer, so because I'm always filming stuff, or photographing stuff. But we were, to all intents and purposes, just sort of loitering around his garden, basically, at 11 in the morning. And I think we got there in the hope that maybe we'll get in early. Funnily enough, he came out. I don't know if you remember. He came out and was like, "Are you here for Mellow?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm not quite open yet." And
he remembered us because I called him the day before. Remember, because there was a real issue about the days down in, because all of the joints in Kyushu organizing it was a bit more hassle than usual because some were closed on Sunday, some were closed on Monday, and then there was, remember, the Lantern Festival and the holiday, so a lot of like opening hours were sort of in flux. And so we decided, like, okay, look, it's not that far, but we don't want to spend 2.5 hours round trip to get up there and have it be closed. So we had called him. So obviously he had what were the chances that another group of foreigners would be showing up, but he was just setting up, and I, in retrospect, I do remember, because I have it in the notes here, he was carrying not only like things into the shop, but also like getting the wood brought in, because do you remember when he finally did open up and we walked into this absolutely beautiful sort of wooden cabin, how lovely the smell was, because he had one of those old style, I don't even know what you called them, that old style like metal wood burning stove.
That's exactly what it's called, a wood burning stove. But yeah, I mean, well, you see, the thing is, I think if we'd had a car, because again, I mean, it's a sort of corny kind of Japan is a land of contrast trope, but it's interesting because if you photograph Mellowtone from a certain angle, what you get is these beautiful sculpted Japanese trees. You get this gorgeous old Japanese house with the kind of the slate roof. Traditional roof. You get this beautiful path, stone path that's laid up to Mellowtone. But then if you just swing the camera around, 45 degrees, you get a flyover. And there's this huge motorway flyover that just goes directly past it. So it's one of those classic things, it just it depends on how you photograph it. And actually just looking at the photographs of you coming up the I mean, you look so sinister in what you're wearing. It is absolutely absurd. But anyway, it's actually a really...
By the way, just an interlude for our American listeners. It's not a flyover that you're thinking. A flyover in America is a highway overpass. Philip, you don't know what a flyover in the States.
What I'm
yeah. But a flyover
that's what I'm talking about. It is a flyover.
No. But that in America, a flyover is like at the Super Bowl when you get the stupid military planes coming over in a big rush. You know what I mean? That's a flyover.
Oh, so you're saying a flyover? Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, overpass.
It's not like there were massive airplanes flying over the guy's house at Mellowtone. It was just a.
Presumably, our American listeners have access to Google. So anyway, but do you know what? It's funny because in the photographs, it's sunglasses weather. There's not a cloud in the sky, and it's really sunny already at that time. I think it was just actually it's 12:20. You're coming up past, so he must have opened at 12:30 that day, but it wasn't. I mean, it was February, right? So it was technically winter. So he had this wood burning stove on, and like you say, it wasn't just the smell, but when you went in, what you went into was this beautifully, I think 3-year-old wooden cabin, essentially, right? The whole inside was done beautifully in what looks like maybe pine, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Right down to the tables and chairs as well, made out of the same material. And at the back, then this kind of Mellowtone sign, also carved out of wood. I mean, it was just a beautiful place, right?
Yeah, you mentioned three. I mean, he'd opened in 2020, and it's really interesting because, as opposed to Harmony, which we talked about in the last episode, which was also sort of a cabiny and wooden and rustic, but was entirely built by the old guy, the guy that did the metal figurines. Remember, he also built that cabin pretty much by himself with, a little bit of contracting help. But our man at Mellowtone, when I asked him, wow, did you do this all yourself? He just burst out laughing. He was like, no, of course not. Because he had been sort of more of a regular, salaryman type for many years. And then this was sort of his dream to open his own place. And, again, being Kyushu, a lot easier to build it on your own land because you have land. Nobody would have any space, up where we're in the Kanto region or many parts of Japan, but down there, definitely a lot more space. So he was able to sort of to get it built fairly cheaply and opened 3 years ago, which was really an interesting time because, I mean, that was pretty much right at the height of COVID when a lot of shops were still on limited opening hours here in Japan and people just weren't going out. So my first thought was just like, oh, okay, that timing is really, really poor. But I got the feeling, Philip, I don't know if you felt this as well, but just talking to him, he had the feel of one of those guys that just seemed like he had a lot of money to spend on this. And
classic.
It wasn't really like a necessity that he had sort of profit targets he had to make in the first 2 years or so. Again, it's pretty far outside even the center of Omura, which is not a huge city. So you'd have to imagine that there's not a lot of customers coming in daily. But when we did sit down to talk with him, we realized that, not only does he have pretty frequent live music, he also invites musicians from, Tokyo and Osaka to come down who want to do like a little Kyushu tour. They'll come and stop by his cafe for a gig. And then just amazingly, like after we come in, do you remember the other customers who came in? They quite shocked us.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, anyone who's listened to this podcast can testify that there is minimal preparation that goes into it, and certainly there's no rehearsal. But the way you introduced that there, I thought, you know what, that is exactly it, because you're talking there about, not many people going to it, but one thing that is different about it, and I suppose that applies to a lot of rural Japan, is cars are used a lot more than the bigger cities, and you can drive to places like this. And incredibly, when we were standing there thinking, yeah, we're here 10 minutes early, we're going to get in here, we're going to get photographing, absolutely nailed it again. This car pulled up outside the Mellow, and in it were two young Japanese women who had come very, very specifically for Mellow. And that kind of connects with something I have on my notes, which is rave reviews on Google. So Mellow seems to be a place that has caught the attention. And I wonder, and I think, potentially what you're witnessing here is what I think could become a real phenomenon. And that is the sort of expansion of jazz kissa being a cool thing beyond middle-aged men who buy records, because when you start to put the pieces together, we've got this example here in Mellow. We also have somewhere like Ella and Louis that we'll come on to in a future episode, where a lot of younger university age Japanese women coming in there alone or together for a drink, for a coffee, for a dessert. And actually what is also seems to be happening, I'm not on TikTok, but it's been brought to my attention now that there are also similar accounts where people are now talking about jazz kissa, talking about Japanese jazz fusion. And I just wonder, is the jazz kissa going to become this kind of retro cool space now for a lot of younger Japanese people, and perhaps particularly younger women? I don't know what you think about that, but it seems to be something on the cusp.
I think it, in some ways, it already has, but it's a combination of factors. It has that, but it also has that. Yes, I also had in the notes, check online reviews, because very, very positive. But they were a mixture of things, because, well, there's Mellow in particular. I think there's three factors. One is, it's a beautiful, beautiful space just to sit in and have a cup of coffee. Okay. And there's some very tasty cake that he provided as well. Okay. So there's that. There's the amazing JBL speakers that, I think it was the best that we heard on this trip, maybe because the space, the way that they designed it for the acoustics. But we were listening. I've got here in my notebook, it says MJQ record, never heard it sound so clean.
The noise that you can hear is two monster JBL speakers, Model 4344 Mark II studio monitors, which, as you'll know from listening to the podcast, means absolutely nothing to us. But what we can tell you is that the sound is just unbelievable. We're sat right in front of them in a 3-year-old wooden house with a wood-burning stove and a piano.
It's much more like a wooden cabin built on the grounds of the owner's house.
Yeah.
North of Nagasaki City.
It's just absolutely. It's also roasting hot because there's the wood-burning stove. We've been here for. This has been a very relaxed, couple
2 hours.
Yeah.
Philip with the absolutely breaking the odds order of banana juice and pizza toast.
Banana juice and pizza toast.
Not a coffee and,
bring it on.
And a bolognese.
Have a coffee. Have a coffee.
Oh yeah, the coffee cake set after.
Cake set.
This is a not just the rustic vibe. that beautiful smell of the burning wood stove. But these speakers are just, we're sitting right next to them. One album after another, sounding so beautiful. He played two CDs that I have, Johnny Hartman, of course, and then Miles Davis. And but you just hear them in a different way when you're sitting next to these things. It's just like the music is so enveloping you. It's unbelievable.
It's just been very mellow. As you can hear from our voices, we're doing our quietest snooker commentary voices. But yeah, what an absolute incredible place. What's also amazing is that apparently musicians come from all over the country, customers come from different places. So it feels very local, but actually it's obviously putting people in, not least two customers that have been sitting here most of the time that we've been here. And we've talked a lot on the podcast about, Kisa tending to be kind of coded male a bit, and perhaps not the most welcoming spaces for women.
And also very older. And this time, when we were waiting outside for the place to open, and a car pulled up, and the two young women in it asking the owner, "Oh, is this Mellow?" It's obviously their first time, and they clearly drove up here from Nagasaki, which is about an hour away, on a holiday. And then just before we recorded here, we heard the owner sort of explaining to them about, well, this is how jazz pieces work, and this is like a Japanese thing. So it was kind of clear it was their first time, and we should have got over our shyness to ask them, how the hell did you hear?
Yeah.
But we guessed it was probably through a social media thing. So he does have Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. But I mean, the future is a mixed bag, I would say. It's not all doom and gloom, certainly. It's not in here. And yeah. Who knows?
Great jazz Kisa talk with the owner too, who lived in Tokyo for a bit and went to a lot of places that we know. And like so many, it was his dream to open it after he retired. So 3 years ago, he opened this place, and I can't wait for everybody to see the pictures. It's just really special.
Maybe we're on the cusp of the big jazz Kisa revival. It's going to sweep through the country like the way Christianity never did.
I think that's possible, especially with some foreign missionaries to lead the international charge.
That's it, yeah.
New ownership,
because we know how that worked in the last. Yes, and on that note.
So,
well, I think it's bordering on the sacrilegious, what I'm about to say, but I think for me that was one of those kind of points. Like we've said, very openly and transparently that neither of us are like audio guys in the sense of like we like sound and decent sound, but we're not like in any shape or form experts or know a lot about that world. But and so there's the kind of the trope of all red wine tastes the same, or all wine tastes the same, and sometimes you get that with speakers as well. You sort of think, oh, well, look, come on, how different can it really be? And can you really tell? Or are you just saying, this, or does this cable really make that much of a difference? But I think that was one of those moments where you thought, okay, you've also got this incredible space with these beautiful acoustics and this wooden interior. But like you said, I mean, it says on the speaker's studio monitor, so I don't know, but they're obviously, I mean, these were, close to 2 meters high. And like you say, I mean, I'm not a MJQ fan in particular, but there was something about the vibraphone and hearing it on those speakers in that space where it was like you heard every single note, right? And we were both just sat there like, wow.
I've got double underlined vibes and bass. Yes, just absolutely pristine. Sitting next to that was a treat. So you've got the very good coffee cake, this beautiful sound, this beautiful structure. And then the other thing was the master. So getting back to the two young ladies, I, of course, eavesdropped on their conversation while you were taking the pictures. And it was very clear because right away they asked him, like, are all jazz Kisa like this? We've never, you know what I mean? Like, we've never really been to any, and what should we expect? Like, we know a little bit of jazz, but like, what should we expect about the environment? And is the menu like this? So they were complete beginners. And, remember, this was, as we talked about, this is a 3-day weekend. So it's a Monday, it's at noon. they decide to hop in the car, take a 30-minute drive from Nagasaki just to come to this cafe that they happen to see somebody tweet or put up an Instagram post about or whatever. And but their questions were great. They were very sincere, and he was actually really, really kind and took time to explain to them a little bit about the history and about how, there's lots of different types of jazz, and sometimes you might not like it a little bit. And he was basically the polar opposite of a lot of surly jazz keys owners that we've run into over the years. And I don't think it was just a sense of, obviously it's a new place and he wants to have repeat customers, so it makes good business sense to be a good host. But I could sense listening to him, he was really, really happy to have new customers in who were asking these kinds of questions, who were very curious. Like, okay, so what exactly is different here compared to where I regularly get coffee? You know what I mean? And what can I expect with the music? And, how am I supposed to act? Can we talk? Can we not talk? All those kinds of beginner questions. And he was very, very warm. So you could see why I could easily imagine those two young women going back and putting on whatever social media they might use and being like, oh, this guy was really friendly. And even if you don't know the music, he welcomed us warmly. You know what I mean? And that could exponentially get more people to come to the place. So, I think it was absolutely just one of the nicest of all the new joints that we visited. Again, the location though, how many customers does he need to stay in business? I had the impression that he was wealthy, but who knows? He might have borrowed money to build this place. We don't know. And then COVID hit,
He talked about going up to Tokyo, and there was a kind of conversation you were having at one point. I can't remember. He did talk a little bit more about what business he was in, and there was definitely talk of going to Tokyo, because I think he was chatting about places, right? I think he was talking about
yes, because he was he spent a lot of time in Tokyo, but also we were talking about that because his job, and I for some reason I didn't write it down, but obviously they sent him overseas because he was telling me about when he went to the Village Vanguard in 1998, and how on that trip to New York, he was able to sneak out 4 of the 7 nights he was there, sneak out away from the Japanese meetings or dinners and get to live jazz. So, you could sense the passion and how excited he was. This is 26 years later, and he was relating the story like it was yesterday. It obviously had a huge impact on him, So his passion for jazz and his sort of manner, and then this beautiful space that he created. I mean, to me, it's definitely a place that I will go out of my way to visit again on my next Kyushu trip, because I could spend, and like you said, Philip, sitting next to speakers, I could have spent 4 hours in there. You know what I mean? Just letting the sound surround you, It was absolutely wonderful.
I noticed that he has a load of books on he also, just looking at some of the photos there, I mean, extensive CD collection too behind the counter, and then also a kind of a curated selection of jazz books, all in Japanese. I mean, hopefully at some point maybe Tokyo Jazz Joints might be in there as well, but I noticed that someone has stolen your trademarked, the trademark title for your memoirs. Karakuchi Jazz Note, those spicy jazz notes. I mean, what? I think that's a court case, isn't it?
I had something a little more not suitable for work implying for my memoirs, but yeah,
fair enough.
It's a good one. Spicy jazz, not violent. At least it's not violent jazz notes.
Well, listen, I think we're also skipping over. I mean, we had some lovely pizza toast, I think, which I have a photograph I'll post on Instagram. But I think we're also missing a very important detail, because not only was there this kind of transformative moment with the speaker, but there was also another theme. Whether it began here, I presume it was continuing here, because, like I said, this was the last day that we had together. But I don't know if you remember what you washed down the pizza toast with, do you?
No.
And it was probably the 4th or the 5th time on this trip, I would say, because we sort of hit on it. And I don't know if it's a Kyushu thing or it's just something that we kind of discovered for lack of other options, and not wanting to endlessly drink cups of bitter coffee, but banana juice.
I had a coffee and a banana juice, and I had both because I definitely had a coffee because it was the first place of the day. And
we started with a coffee, because it was the first of the day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so coffee and a pizza toast are not going to mix very well, right? So yes, I got the banana juice. Yeah, and I think it took a hell of a long time to come too. And then I remember hearing a blender noise too. So he wasn't just pouring that out of a paper carton from the supermarket. It was a local.
Oh no, it's like proper,
locally
yeah.
sourced, and it was really, really good. Yeah.
That was a revelation for me on this trip, though. There's a lot of banana juices consumed. It's like once we got onto one, it just, it came up in quite a few places. And it's a nice alternative because if it's too early to drink and you've had too much coffee, it's perfect.
We'll save that for the Outtakes podcast, but banana juice has a very, very calming effect on certain parts of the body that caused me trouble at times on our trips, Philip. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. Okay. Well, I think on that note, we'll skip ahead. Now, I've got you back on the train in a very fetching Eagle t-shirt and a mask at 3:30. So we obviously headed back to the station. We spent a good time in Mellow.
We must have, I think we, yeah, that's right. Because we were not pressed for time because our next joint wasn't going to open till evening, so we didn't, we spent at least 2 hours there for sure.
Yeah, it was a much slower day, that one, because like you said, of all the travel restrictions, but also more specifically the fact that certain places were closed and were open on Sundays and Mondays and weren't open and so on and so forth. So I think that was a slow start to the day, and then we weren't in any rush, but we did get back to Nagasaki, and then again, perhaps the culinary highlight of the trip and certainly of our time together.
Not very hard considering you usually eat the nasty Jazzki curry, but this was all on me because I think I had told you about this, that I found this place.
Oh, I might have known you discovered it first.
Very randomly, and was I'll be honest, I'm okay, look, I'll admit it. I have certain small peccadillos when it comes to food, but
understatement.
So this one was around the corner from a couple of the jazz places that I had been scouting out, and as always, kind of like messing up opening times, whatever. And then I saw this shop, and it was basically lemon ramen. So it was a bowl of ramen, but with slices of lemon in it. And I just thought, at first, no, I don't think that taste is going to mesh very well, right? And I'm not talking about one slice of lemon. I'm talking like 4 or 5 thick slices floating around on top, right? But I went in that time when I went to Nagasaki about almost 2 years ago now, and it was absolutely stupendous. I couldn't believe how great it was. I actually was looking for a lemon ramen place in Yokohama, and I couldn't find one. So it's very much a local sort of, a local dish. And we were lucky that we had the, as I said, we were killing some time. We went in, and you were extremely impressed.
It was. I'm gonna use it again. It was transformational. I remember posting a picture and sharing this with a few people, and like people were like, "No, that can't work." Now it's a sort of a tonkotsu soup. Sort of like a creamy soup, and it has this lemon, a lot of like black pepper and stuff on top as well. But it was absolutely, I don't know, it's like the lemon, like the citrus cuts through the sort of, sometimes tonkotsu can be quite thick and quite fatty. So I don't know if that's why it works, but it definitely works. And it was absolutely
clean.
beautiful.
It tasted clean,
Good word.
And almost like you didn't, because sometimes even with a tasty ramen, you come out and you feel a little heavy. It's a little bit thick, a little bit too much maybe. But this came out, it's very clean. It's almost a refreshing taste, absolutely wonderful. And I remember telling the I don't know if they were the owner, but at least one of the guys that works there and the lady that works there, and I said, well, you won't remember, I was here like 2 years ago, but like I still was thinking about it, and I had to come back, and they were really happy, and I think they said something like, oh yeah, like sometimes like the foreign tourists come in, but they're a little skeptical, because they want to have Japanese ramen, and this is different. And I was like, well, I'll recommend this to anybody that drops by, because it was that good.
They had good t-shirts,
I even wanted
too.
A t-shirt. Yes, I wanted a t-shirt.
I tried to buy one, but she said, no, we don't have any.
Yeah.
Well, look, before we head on to the next place, I'll post this photo. There's a lovely photo. I just noticed it there. There's that photograph of you and I taken in the selfie mode. And in between us, James, there's a picture. And you know what it says? It says always. It says always, and below that it says "Shiawase dana."
Is that because we just smiling after eating the lemon ramen? I don't remember.
Don't
this
know.
picture.
I just think I
You know,
just
you
how
gotta send that
lovely.
to me. I
Just,
don't remember. I don't remember this picture. Yeah, we don't take
how
too many
lovely, and
selfies. Yeah.
no, we don't. And you know what a chance encounter. What just sums up our relationship really. Always and Shiawase Dana. And I know you for one. I'm always very happy when I come back. I mean, I'd like to say it's 100% mutual, but obviously that would be a lie. But it's never the worst time when we go around these places. And so we were getting to the end of this. What hadn't really been that long a day, to be honest. But around about, we must have gone back to the hotel or something, or just wandered.
We
I think
we had a little film buying adventure in the local big camera. I think it was big
film buying
donkey.
adventure, and also I think I might have gone to a couple of record shops. I think you went back for probably a nap.
I did not. Not that day.
No, there was definitely some day that I wandered around in the rain trying to find record shops. I think it was this day, but anyway, I mean, either way, we headed over to a place that obviously you had been as well, because you'd been, as you said, a couple of years ago. I was desperate to get into this place, so I would have been heartbroken if I hadn't seen it. And luckily for us, it was open, and we went to the absolutely incredible Sarumanyan. I mean, where do you even begin? I'm just looking at the owner here wearing a kind of French-style beret and a huge red T-shirt over a green tracksuit top zipped up to the neck with Sonny Rollins' face on it. And Sonny Rollins' hat is made up of all the titles of his albums. He's kind of wearing a bucket hat, which has been formed out of all the titles of his albums on the T-shirt. I mean, it's quite something, this T-shirt.
I mean, Sarumanyan is just an absolute gem. Okay, an all-time pantheon jazz sign outside the shop. Two of them, actually. One that says the name of the shop, Sarumanyan, and one that just says jazz in big black letters.
Just as jazz,
yeah. Just as jazz. So if you're walking up the street, you can see it from 30 meters away. It just says jazz at night, which is just incredible. A quick intro just about the name. So, because I was very intrigued as to what it meant, because he has it written in both, he has it written in Latin letters, but also in the hiragana, Japanese script. But that's clearly not a Japanese sounding name. So I said, it was Sarumanyan. Is it something about Nagasaki? Maybe something coming from the Portuguese or the Dutch, or I don't know. And he's like, no. It's actually from way up in Hokkaido. There is a lake, Saroma. And he was up there playing. So our man, Mizuguchi-san, the incredibly dressed Mizuguchi-san you just mentioned, he was a saxophone based in Nagasaki. So he used to play a lot around. And he was up in Hokkaido, and he stayed in a small, what he called it, a pension, a small B&B, and that was called Sarumanyan, after the lake. And he really loved the people there, and he loved the name. And so he just decided to name his jazz bar that. And I was like, that's just great. Because, look, I mean, I love a great Miles or Monk or Bird or whatever, the usual Dolphy, names of the jazz greats. But it was really, really cool to hear a completely non-jazz related story about where the name, and a very unique name. It's not a word that you would ever have heard before, So right away, you're like, okay, I'm really intrigued by the story. I'm really intrigued by this guy, Mizuguchi-san, who is an absolute mensch. He's 79 years old. Has had a little bit of health issues now and then, as they all do, but he still does play saxophone, and he's not just wearing that Sonny Rollins T-shirt because he's a fan. He very proudly showed us a bunch of pictures of him playing with Sonny Rollins, and it was just like, look, Philip, we've talked to so many jazz quiche owners and customers who've been to these amazing gigs, or even drank with their heroes after the gig, over and over again. But very, very few of them could say they actually played with a guy like Sonny Rollins. And so when you see that picture, you're just sort of like, oh my God. And I mean, yeah, again, if it was me, I'd be showing that picture every single day to every person I met. You know what I mean? Because it's like, wow.
Yeah, I took a photo of that photo actually, and I mean, again, I'll post that, so check it out. If you're always have a look on Instagram, there's usually some stories that some photographs that'll add to the stories. But he's got written in very small script. So I mean, the photograph, as you'll see if you're looking at it, it's him and Sonny Rollins. It says Sonny Rollins for my good friend in Japan, and incredibly, Sonny Rollins is also wearing a T-shirt which says Sonny Rollins, and it's that amazing picture of him as a samurai that we've talked about before, that we saw, I think for the first time we saw in Naima down in Kyushu. And it says 2001 the photograph was taken, I think, and then I think it was signed in 2010 in Osaka NHK Hall. So it just shows you, I think, not the fact that people had met some of these musicians, like you say, even played with them, but there were real, like, relationships and like links established with these people. These were, to all intents and purposes, friendships, right? I mean, it was more than sort of, catching somebody at the end of a gig or, and tracking them down and getting them to sign something. I mean, these people hung out together, and, they were friends, right?
Well, the musicians have written about beyond the warm welcome that they have received when they came to Japan. They've written about it's almost like that they're coming back to family. We talked in the last episode about our man at Dolphy's Inn buying the kimonos from Milt Jackson's wife. We talked about way back the incredible Ray Brown in northern Japan in Iwate Prefecture, where you walk in and you see the owner and his wife and Ray Brown's wife at the owner's wedding. It's a portrait of the four of them at the guy's wedding in Japan.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy,
and then he names the kiss after him. So I mean, these bonds go far beyond many times just being a fan. They've actually established relationships, and and talking with Mizuguchi-san, it was interesting for a lot of different reasons. I think from the notes, when we visited, we didn't get too much into that. When I had gone the first time alone and it was pretty quiet, we were talking quite a bit about, the history of jazz down in Kyushu, and also about how he runs the bar but still basically wants to go around playing, but he needs the bar to make money, which was a very curious thing to say because it's only, you remember how small it is? I mean, you could barely get about 8 or 9 people in there. So I don't know how much cash he's actually bringing in on a nightly basis, but I guess
it's not an earner by any means. I mean, I'm sure the rent is negligible, but it's in quite a central area, like a sort of nightlife area, and like you say, he has that huge sign out in the street, and so it's not some tiny little hidden place by any means. Also, you can see it's up on the second floor, and part of the wall is windows, so you can kind of see out as well. Like, so it's a pretty good location.
And very well known.
But like
if you
say,
look
there's
up on
maybe
a lot of the
6,
jazz
7
blogs, all the Japanese jazz fans who go down to Kyushu are going to go by there. I've seen hundreds of pictures, of people over.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a clutter too. It's one of those places that is just pure clutter. I mean, I'm looking through just some of the photos I took. You mentioned about Sonny Rollins and some of that. I mean, he also has this photograph of him with Joe Henderson in 1995. So he at least met him, if not played with him as well. And then, of course, our old friend Richard Davis signed this toilet door as well back in 1993. That man,
Davis sighting.
That man went mad with a marker all across Japan, I tell you.
Wow, amazing. I forgot. I remember the door having a lot of signs on it. Signatures on it, but I didn't. Yeah, I should have assumed Richard Davis. That's great. Also got the notes though, and this gets the very very rare triple exclamation mark. Triple exclamation mark. Very very rare. He saw Coltrane on the Coltrane tour in 1966.
He met him actually. I've got met Coltrane in 66, so he must have actually seen him, but also met him. Which again, is just like one step away from.
He would have been, but that's the thing.
Deity.
He would have been only 21 years old. So I'm guessing he was a college student, or if not, then maybe just starting out in his career as a young musician. But yeah, I mean, again, the people we met quite a few people who saw Coltrane on that one visit to Japan he did. And it marked their lives forever. I mean, obviously, I mean, obviously, how could it not? But it's just great because they also always talk about how maybe they didn't get to spend time or anything, but that they were able to even just say hello. Or in this case, like he got to talk to him probably because he was a musician, and so he would have hooked him up through the college band he was in or whatever. But some really really great stories, great chat from Mizuguchi-san. I was completely thrilled because he remembered me. He remembered my last name. Because he called me by that. Because usually the Jazz Kisa guys are when they remember me, they usually remember me as just James or James-san, But he pulled out the full Catchball-san, which was just like, wow, okay, this guy actually remembered the chat. I was so happy about that because it was 2 years earlier. There would be no reason that he really should remember, but he totally remembered everything. Whatever health problems, I think he said it was something to do with his leg or his knee, but his mind was really, really sharp. Was relaying a lot of great stories to us. Even talked a bit about Nagasaki, and I think we mentioned this in the previous episode, Philip. But that, and for someone like him who's a local, he really is proud and happy that people like us would come to talk to his bar, and that we came down to Nagasaki to do like a jazz tour, and completely had really no plans to visit the Atomic Museum because he was like, I don't want people just coming here for that. Like, we have so much more in this town. We have great history, and specifically the jazz history too. I mean, we talked about like Elvin Jones was there, et cetera, et cetera. So he was always like really, he said he's really thrilled when overseas tourists, come in for a drink, even if they just see the sign and are like, oh, jazz bar, let's pop in, and they're not really jazz fans. He's happy to host them. So yeah, a top class joint.
I mean, interestingly too, we talk a lot about humility and that kind of thing as well, but he quite happily and openly was put on his own music too. He was playing at different times stuff that he himself had recorded, which was great. He also, I noticed he's got a couple of branded bottles of bourbon there with his own photograph on them. But yeah, I mean, he also did that thing I think that comes with older age too, where there was a lot of writing stuff in notebooks, and I think when he kind of, when he asked my name, then he kind of wrote it down as well on a little bit of paper and got me to check it. And so there's definitely an element there, perhaps of like writing stuff down to remember and putting things in different little kind of notebooks. And there was a lot of activity, just sort of as we were sitting there listening and when he wasn't talking, and he also got a, the old Jazz Road book, and he was looking through that kind of thing as well. But
understandable. I've got 3 different notebooks filled with jazz notes in front of me on my desk as we're recording, and I'm a lot younger than Mizuguchi-san, so
I rest my case.
Yeah, that's no, definitely understand that. But I mean, yeah, it would definitely interesting too, though, because like I said, I mean, he's 79 this year. He was noticeably more I don't want to say chatty. What would be the right word? Just a lot quicker than some of the other owners that we've spoken about in the last couple episodes of a similar age. And I guess I mean, look, we're not there yet, but I guess it can happen pretty quickly. Like he said he actually was closed for a few months because of his leg injury, but I think unlike our man Dear Harasan at Coltrane 2 episodes back, who we spent a lot of time talking about, who also had a bad leg injury. Remember, he fell, he kind of broke his leg, he had to close for, what was it, 8 weeks? But Harasan's memory was definitely a little bit of an issue. I think we talked on the episode too about his wife being a little concerned about leaving him in the bar by himself, et cetera, et cetera. Mizuguchi-san, he's all there, and he was saying like he doesn't play live gigs much anymore, but that's more of a function of that there's just not many opportunities. He says that he can still play, he's still got the lungs, and I was just like, oh, that's a real shame, because as we know from his hero Sonny Rollins, who's still with us but hasn't been able to perform for the last 5 or 6 years, at some point you have to retire. So I hope that he can get out there and get some gigs in, before he turns 80.
Yeah, I think also it's that thing of it's what he does, right? And it's who he is. And so, until you're physically incapacitated and unable to carry on in that way and run a business, in the basic sense, then, why wouldn't you, because what's the alternative, right? I mean, you're going to be sitting at home just fixing to die, really. I mean, that, let's be blunt about it. And obviously he has reduced, I think, his opening hours and opening days from what it would have been previously, but you know, it's still something he's getting up for, he's doing it, he's running it. You know, there's kind of proper menus there. I notice he's embraced the mojito and things like that. So, you know, he's still running a business.
That's
and like
right.
you say,
I forgot about the mojito. Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
So people are coming, you know, like people, like you say, people who are coming to visit, or people who maybe will listen to this, or either in Nagasaki, or when you do visit Nagasaki. And as we've mentioned as well, I mean, there's a lot of people visiting Nagasaki, so that's not an unrealistic outcome. But and the joy of Japan, of course, is that when we left Saramanian, we walked literally 3 minutes, if even that, round the corner onto the Shotengai, and lo and behold, the mysterious shutter was fully up, and we finished off the night in the lovely jazz
3 minutes,
bar Django.
30 seconds. Yeah, it was right.
Closer, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And finally, not just to get in, but to to get in and to solve the great mystery of the half shutter, which was very anticlimactic. We should probably just
It was a wee bit. It was a wee bit. Yeah,
it was pretty boring. It was like, oh yeah, that's the lady that lives on the second floor. She just leaves it open when she's like coming in and out. I was like, oh, that's it.
Ah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Gosh darn it. Yeah. But Django, no, great to get in, especially because remember, Philip, when I don't know if you remember, but when I had gone 2 years ago, that was the last, because Saramanian was so great. Okay, I ended up staying on my first trip, I think, with Ms. Gucci-san and one of the regular customers there for like about 2.5 hours. And so by the time I got to Django on a Friday night, it was a little too late. You know, as we've talked about, I always try to get there as early as possible, if not right when they open, but before the crowd gets there. But I think I got to Django at about 9 or 9:30, and it was almost fully packed. It seats about, how would you say, maybe about 20 people in a long counter bar and some tables in the back. Very, very dark place. They've got the windows completely, like, you know, painted over. So it's extremely dark and quite narrow. But the bar is beautiful. It's a beautiful long wooden bar. And I walked in, and at that point I was already feeling a little tipsy. So I didn't really talk to the owner at all. I just gave him my card when I left. And I said, oh, look, I'll come back one time to, you know, interview or whatever. So we only got the full scoop about Django this time. And what would you say stood out the most about it?
Oh, I can tell you straight away the answer to that question. Was what hung at the end of the bar. So when we came in, like, it's one of these, and we've been to a lot of places like this, you know, this beautiful, big, heavy, really heavy duty wooden bar, really kind of warm, cozy, intimate feel. But right at the end of the bar, there was hanging this kind of collage. And on the left-hand side, it's a picture of Coltrane smoking. And on the right-hand side, it's a picture of Coltrane playing the flute. And then I think at the bottom is Elvin Jones. So I was like, where is that from? I said, I've never seen those photographs before. And he said, oh, well, that's because they've never been published. And basically a local photographer, I think, or a friend of his or someone that he knows, took these photographs in 1966, also when Coltrane came to Japan for the only time, you know, before dying the following year. And these photographs have never been like published or put out anywhere, which is why, you know, and you're so used to so many kind of like iconic photographs. And that's just hanging at the end of the bar. And that was kind of not long before we left. And I just thought, how mad is that? You know, like, that is just there. And very few people know about it, and may never know about it because it may never get, you know, I don't even know who the photographer was, whether the negatives still exist, whether that person's alive. Like, you just don't know, right? But that's what stood out for me.
Sasuke, Philip, we are always in sync, just like the lemon ramen.
Oh yeah,
because that was exactly what I knew. What I knew you were going to say. Amazing for, as you mentioned, for a lot of reasons. I mean, just because how cool it is, but also the fact that, like, wait, what? Like, nobody, you know what I mean? Like, nobody, you know, because sometimes we've seen some, you know,
wild
photos, or, you know, in magazines or whatever. But like, this is like it's really a one of one of Coltrane. You know, I mean, think of what Coltrane collectors would do to get their hands on that, you know? And yeah, I mean, that's probably the top memento, or one of the top mementos we saw on this trip. Django itself, a really, really great bar, a lot nicer than I remembered, I guess because we had time to talk with the owner. It was very chatty. Mostly playing CDs, but he's got a vintage Macintosh amp and a nice speaker setup, so the sound was great. It's a little, feels like, if any of you out there, any of our listeners out there know what shot bars are, what they mean by shot bar in Japan, it kind of feels a bit like
it's that feel.
It had a little bit of that feel, but also with like the random, like again the captain's wooden captain boat wheel. Steering wheel. Oh my God! Back to that again. You remember?
Not again.
Yeah, I remember. It's got like some of that kind of stuff in there too. Some of that wooden sort of like, for whatever reason, like sea type decor, and the back walls. I don't know if you got even back there to take the pictures, but no. But it's a lovely spot to have a drink. Definitely, he was playing. Let's see. I've been here. He was playing Alfie by Sonny Rollins, man, with Kyushu. It's quite amazing.
He really left his mark on Kyushu.
Yeah.
You know, and we haven't even got to Miyazaki yet, but I mean, he really left his mark on Kyushu. But I mean, the bar itself, like, it's one of those places that it feels a little bit like similar to that one, King Kong Kang, and like, you know, there's a sense of like almost like someone had taken it over, but actually it wasn't. Like, he'd been doing it for 26 years, so it was quite well established. Like, it wasn't, but you know, if you were going to kind of separate into like two very broad groups, you've got Saramanian on one side, which is that kind of like, you know, the guy's a musician, but eccentric. It's like chaotic. It's just like all sorts of shit everywhere. And then you go in there, and it's very packed with stuff, but it's much more ordered, much sort of cleaner, like a bit not fancier in a negative way, but just, it, like, again, I suppose the best way is that kind of shop bar feel. Like, it just feels like the other place feels to me like it can only be jazz. But this is a sort of place they could be playing like rock music or something else as well, right?
I would say it's more that Saramani is a place that's you're going to have to go out of your way as a jazz fan to go to. But Django, if you're a tourist in Nagasaki, and again, you're right around there with a lot of restaurants and whatnot, and you just be like, you might not even have heard of Django Reinhardt. You just see the sign for the bar, and you look, as soon as you walk in, you see the beautiful behind the counter, all the bottles with the nice twinkly light. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, this is a great place to have a drink, and he's playing some nice jazz, you know? So even for a non-fan, that's a place to go for a good whiskey, for a date, for a post-meeting drink, or whatever you might do. Whereas, you know, places like Saramanian or Milestone are sort of like, no, you're going there for the music, you know what I mean? Like, the drinks and the atmosphere are sort of separate. But a great bar, and it was a great way to end the evening and to finally get in. Of course, I requested some more Bobby Hutcherson, which he put on the Dialogue album, which was incredible, of course. And I think we had did we have one or two nightcaps there? I don't remember. It wasn't a late night though. We were we were out of there by about 9:30. I think it was pretty early.
So we're standing here in.
We're not standing, we're walking.
We're walking outside of a really lovely street in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Listening to some local.
You might be wondering, how did we get from Nagasaki to Shanghai so quickly? Well, I suppose you could take a plane. We've just, this day, what is it, day 5? This is the end of our second Kyushu Odyssey. We just left the wonderful Django. What a way to finish.
Amazing. Finally got in.
Finally got in after much Shudder shenanigans last night. Are we going to make this light?
Yep.
And that's been it. You'll probably know better than us by this stage of the podcast how many places we've been to in these 5 days, but everyone's been worth the hassle, been worth the effort. A couple of disappointments, but that is the nature of it. Why are you pointing your finger at me? Hang on, we're just checking our instructions here. Still not using the direction button. Hit the direction button.
I gotta figure out where we are first before you hit the direction button.
No, that's
for Christ's sake. Jesus.
You have to put it in the hotel.
Oh, Jesus.
It's like behind the scenes. Absolute behind the scenes gold. Right. Walking. Straight.
I hate this direction thing, though.
No, but it's this way. Anyway.
It's always pointing me the other way.
That was filler. What? It's always pointing the wrong way. Only if you're walking in the opposite direction.
Always pointing the wrong way.
Anyway, yeah, one of 5 days. Exhausting, exhilarating.
Still got the beautiful lanterns up, which is a really nice walk home. And it feels like it's 1 a.m. because when we were in Saruman, it was dark and quiet. But it's not even 9 p.m.
Yeah.
But we're pretty burnt after this trip. And you've got a super early rise.
Yeah.
So
I'm up 6 a.m. for the train tomorrow. It's absurdly takes about 7 hours to get to Miyazaki, where hopefully there'll be 4 places waiting, 3 of which James has been to.
Oh, all 4.
You go to Far Cry as well?
I did go to Far Cry.
All
yes.
4 of them.
All 4. Oh, yeah.
And
all worth it. So it's going to be a great day for you.
And we're going to revisit those places in a future episode. So for now, any final words? Wise ones?
Yeah, put on some Bobby Hutcherson and pour yourself a Bushmills and check out the book and, live vicariously.
Yeah, and if you don't drink, just a Coke or a
make some
Fanta.
chamomile tea or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got myself here. I've got a photograph of myself, as you do, back in the hotel at 10:10, like ready to go to, ready for bed, basically. So it was definitely an earlier one. And I think in a way it worked out quite nicely, that trip. We started with that really intense, and it didn't wind down by any means, but like it definitely, we really pushed through in the earlier stages of that trip. And by that stage, we were tired.
I've got in my notebook here because we got back to the hotel. I think you had to do some laundry, and then you had the really early start the next day for Miyazaki. And I got a text from a friend saying like, whoa, what an ending to the Super Bowl. And I was like, because I'm a baseball guy. I'm not really an American football guy, but I mean, I'll check the Super Bowl. So I was like, well, I guess I'll check the highlights. So I ended up having a nightcap beer in the hotel room, watching an edited version of the Super Bowl on YouTube before crashing out. And it was actually a great game. So a very smashing end to the weekend, Philip.
Well, a little travel hack for anybody who doesn't live in Japan. If you are going to visit, as you know, I've very, very much embraced the traveling light, as you can see from some of the photos that will go up for the next episode. But the one incredible thing about Japan, one of the many incredible things about Japan, is that in every hotel you go to, there are a pair of clean pajamas. So first of all, you don't need to bring pajamas. Don't be wasting space in your bag for that. And secondly, if you're, particularly in a warm season, if you're traveling around and you don't want to be schlepping bags up and down escalators, and like Japan's not the most accessible place when it comes to transport. The transport's incredible, but like if you have any mobility issues or you have very heavy bags, it's not always as easy to get up and down stairs and things like that. But and also then there's always so many people. So I've gone very, very light, but depending on how long you're away, 3-4 t-shirts max, underwear, a couple of pairs of trousers. And the other brilliant thing about Japanese hotels is they all have laundry that you can do yourself. So you're not putting it into reception and paying a fortune. There's a machine, you go in there, 30-40 minutes, done. It's got a dryer for all the small stuff that you need to do. And also, as you've referenced a couple of times previously, Japanese hotel rooms are usually quite warm and always very dry, so your clothes dry super quick. So that's a massive travel hack. I should have a TikTok channel for this stuff. I could be monetizing this. I could be making a fortune.
I mean, I already took.
I might cut that out.
Listen, the last thing I want to hear about is your laundry anymore, because we already talked about it so much when we were on the train. Because you were like, I don't know if it's going to dry in time. I'm going to get up early. Oh my god! And as a t-shirt a day man myself, the last thing I want to do on my vacation is do any laundry. So I heartily do not endorse your message there. But yes, no, you are right. People coming from overseas is different. I mean, I'm going home afterwards to my my place here in Yokohama.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, almost every hotel does have that. It's amazing. Philip, I kind of forgot about that. Like American hotels, do they not provide like a Okay, not going to give you a
Oh.
yukata like they do here. They don't provide you with a robe or pajamas or.
Are you having a laugh? I think you've lived in Japan too long, mate. You want to come to hotels now here? Like you're lucky if you get breakfast.
Are you kidding?
In fact, it's a UK standard, UK and Ireland standard. You don't get breakfast unless you pay more.
Yeah, but that's insane. Like the prices are like
things.
$200, $300 a day. You don't even get the free soaps and the toothbrush.
Yeah,
all that.
It's called shrinkflation. You get less for more money. That's how it works. Look at the size of chocolate bars. Anyway, now we've just gone into ranting pensioners podcast,
Jesus.
so
yeah.
we'll probably pause it there. Anyway, look, I'm glad I was in bed actually, and part of the reason was because, as we'll cover in the next episode, in episode 72, this is where we parted ways. You returned home to the rough and gritty streets of North Yokohama, and I continued on for another couple of days before making my own way back to Tokyo. And they were two absolutely epic days. I mean, it's still quite comical to me just how far and how long I traveled in one case to go to one particular place. So we'll pick that up in the next episode. Obviously, we were reunited back in Tokyo, and we went to a few more places, which, we'll be covering in future episodes. So make sure you hang in there. And if you want to look at any photos to kind of further contextualize what we've been talking about in some of the episodes, generally speaking, at Tokyo Jazz Joint's Instagram feed will have them. So you can see some of the ridiculous outfits that I've been talking about that James is wearing. And of course, more importantly, the lemon ramen. The lemon ramen, right?
I think
still the highlight of the trip.
I am consistently complimented on the quality of my music T-shirts and batik selections, so I will not be taking any slander on my fashion sense whatsoever.
Fair enough. Anyway, right, look, James, as always, it's been nothing but a pleasure. Thank you, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, please tell other people. If you didn't, tell no one. We always appreciate reviews. We appreciate people posting it, sharing it. And it helps get not only Tokyo Jazz Joints out there as a project, but just more awareness about jazz kisa culture and why we need to keep it alive. So in the meantime, James, go get that air conditioner back on full blast, and we'll chat again in a couple of weeks.
Yep, maybe even sooner than we think. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See ya.